I still remember very early on, a white boy, but he said to me, "Why don't you go back to your country? If your country is so good, if your schools are so good, why did you come here?" And I was like, I'm here to pay your school fees at a higher level as an international student to prop up your school. If I weren't here, your school would be closed. So thank me. Attending a public school from the age of 16 is a bit too late, in my opinion.
Me too. I agree.
I consider myself so lucky that I got the opportunity to attend from the age of 14.
Yep.
I would say that I loved it because it taught me how to be confident.
Yep.
And how to take shortcuts in life. These are the two key things that have been helping me every step of the way to become who I am now. In my term report cards, my beak, as in Harrow they call it, the teachers, they used to say that, "Oh, Joe is very good academically, but
there's always a but.
There's always a but. He's not as loud, as talkative, as contributing in classes." And I used to remember there was a guy on the left of me and on the right. There's an Indian guy and an aristocrat, Lord Gordon from Scotland. His family's Marquis of Aberdeen or something. 200 years ago, his ancestor was at Harrow and was prime minister. And they used to be so bloody talkative, able to explain themselves out of any situation, always proving themselves to be right on the bloody political spectrum, and yet scoring B's and C's in their exams and always got that A. And yet they got better report cards because the school appreciated someone who can talk themselves out. I then realized this is not about your exam grade. That's a difference.
That's a big difference between
the UK system and the Hong Kong system. No, but Sep, can I ask questions that some of my clients actually have asked before, which are really valid and relevant, which is that there are so many cons of sending children to a public school.
Definitely.
The first thing, obviously, is because we're Chinese. How serious is racism?
I think, to be very honest, it is a problem. And I think if you were studying in Hong Kong, even in an international school, it might be mitigated slightly by being an international school, but nevertheless, I think simply by going to a boarding school from Hong Kong, it will make you a target for racism as a starting point. Prima facie, as we would say.
Yeah. But what I want to be devil's advocate here. What if I say that it's generally an issue under the umbrella of bullying, really? I mean, race is just an excuse for students to target on for bullying. Because that is my experience. I never thought that racism is exactly the problem. The problem really is bullying.
It's just bullying. Like you said, no, of course, definitely.
In general, when you're locked up in a sort of prison, really, you want to weigh yourself up. You want to know where you belong in an ecosystem. And when race is a factor, you take that into the calculation. And you try to bully people for whatever factor you can use, for being a nerd. For being... Teenage, I'm sure your experience is the same. Teenage boys are incredibly simplistic. Yeah, whatever you can use. The thing is, because I want to make a confession here, because I used to be not the bullied, but I used to bully. I used to bully whoever guy I can pick on. White guy, Indian guy, Chinese guy. I didn't care. I didn't care. I used to bully. One of the funniest things I ever did in my public school days was I had a neighbor opposite me who arranged his sort of IKEA furniture, right? So he moved his bed from one side to the other, his wardrobe one side to the other, his desk from one side to the other. And then he went out for It was after homework time, so he had some time off, and he left the boarding house.
Right.
And without anyone knowing, I entered his room and rearranged everything back to the original state. And he got back, and he got into his room, and it was like as if he never moved a thing. And he got paranoid because what happened, right? And he started to ask around, including myself. And I, along with others, tried so hard to convince him that he never moved anything. It was illusion, and it was probably...
You were gaslighting before gaslighting was a thing.
Exactly. I was trying to, manipulate him into thinking that it was all a dream.
And
he got so paranoid.
Some people might think that this is such a pointless prank to pull, but this is exactly the kind of pranks that were pulled by boys at all boys schools.
Yeah.
Of course, there were the sort of cliched fighting, physical type abuse. Yeah. But the others were things like this, were very petty, almost
petty.
Almost
we are
girl-like.
smarter than that. Real fights are so 1980s. By our time, they were obsolete. You can't do that without risking getting kicked out. But we were smarter than that.
Yep.
I used to bring a 50p coin into the showers, and all those door locks. There was you can unlock it with a coin.
Yep.
And we used to do that. Unlock the shower door and take away the towel. I didn't give a damn whether you were white or Indian or whoever. I just wanted to, have fun, take the piss.
Exactly.
So I tend to think that, racism is the factor for sure, but no, you can beat them in their own game.
Definitely.
And I used to be the guy who go around and bully the white guys. I didn't give a damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the race thing is also, you learn to either you succumb to it, and then you, as an Asian,
or you rise up to it,
and then you own it.
Yeah, I owned it.
I absolutely owned it as well.
Some white students, when I first went to the UK, to that provincial public school in Cambridgeshire, I still remember very early on, a white boy, we became rather good friends afterwards, but he said to me, "Why don't you go back to your country? If your country is so good, if your schools are so good, why did you come here?" And I was like, I'm here to pay your school fees at a higher level as an international student to prop up your school. If I weren't here, your school would be closed. So thank me. I used to do that. Yeah. And they loved it. The white boys didn't hate it. They loved it. Because it's banter. I think we need to explain to the audience what banter means.
Oh, gosh.
We are not actually being that serious or earnest. It's all about...
Neither side are actually being serious. Neither side are actually being racist per se, or trying to cause upset or harm to anybody.
Yeah.
It's just banter.
It's just banter. Banter is nothing serious.
No,
it's a game.
It's a game, yeah.
Where you sort of back yourself, always trying to prove yourself...
In different ways.
Pushing the boundaries. In that act of proving yourself right, you gain respect. As long as you back yourself, as long as you remain confident, don't concede, then they will respect you for it.
Yep.
It's a bit like, say, you're a fan of which football team? Seb, you're not a Man U fan.
I'm a Chelsea fan.
You're a Chelsea fan, and I'm a Man U fan. And we engage in friendly banter.
Yep.
And I'll be saying that Man United is the best team, and you'll be saying that Chelsea is the biggest team. As long as we don't concede and we attack each other for our team, each other will be respected for it. And that's the entire public school game.
Exactly. And the banter culture, it's actually very interesting. This is a probably quite unique aspect of the public school thing, because like you said, there's to and fro from both sides with the banter. But when all things are said and done, you metaphorically shake hands and move on.
Yeah.
You can say things to somebody today and tomorrow, and then the next day you come back as if nothing's happened.
Yeah.
And then the day after that, you banter again and you diss each other, and that was the culture.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've had a lot of clients asking how they can be as confident, talkative, persuasive, and generally such a big believer in yourself. And I have to say that honestly, I benefited from my public school education, not from Oxford. Oxford helped, of course, to help me to hone my ability to think critically. But it was really the experience between the ages 14 and 18 in a public school.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that question is put to you. Okay, so Seb, if I hadn't been to a public school, if I grew up in Hong Kong all the way, how can I be as confident, as self-believing as you are?
I can definitely answer this one, and anecdotally, especially for those who might want to send their children to boarding schools and are concerned about possible racism. It's when in Rome, do as the Romans do. If you are going to the UK boarding school from Hong Kong and you perhaps weren't exposed that much to Western culture, and you get there and it's a big shock to you, how do you fit in? You just mimic everything that they're doing.
Yeah,
and then they will start to appreciate at least that you're trying to get along with
that's what I did
with them.
Seb, that's such a great point, because people often ask how I picked up this accent and way of talking, and I say that I learned it from my school experience in England, and they ask me at what age did I move to England. And I was like 14, and I had been to local schools all the way before that, and they were like, it's not easy to pick that up from the age of 14. And I usually tell them that because I'm so good at mimicking, it's all about mimicking.
And actually wholeheartedly getting involved in the mimicking, not just sort of in the surface level when you're sitting in the classroom, for example. It's actually doing the things they're doing and believing in the things they're doing.
Just play their game.
Playing their game, exactly.
I played their game. I loved it. So can I ask, I mean, obviously we're still young. I mean, I'm not that young, by the way, but I have no
still
kids.
Young at heart.
Would you send your kids, if you did eventually have some, would you send them to public school?
I think so. I think so. I do think that the public school education is one of the best education systems in the world for laying a foundation. Of course, it has its pros and has its cons, but as an overall training for what is to come in the rest of your life, the other 60 years, those 5 to 10 years or less, perhaps even 3 years, depending on when you go, will put you in a great position.
I would say attending a public school from the age of 16 is a bit too late, in my opinion.
Me too. I agree.
I consider myself so lucky that I got the opportunity to attend from the age of 14. And yes, same. I would send my children to public schools. And I would say that I loved it because it taught me how to be confident. And how to take shortcuts in life. These are the two key things that have been helping me every step of the way to become who I am now. So this is not promotion, by the way, but I do believe in the public school system. I mean, one of my biggest heroes intellectually and in real life is Bertrand Russell, the mathematician and philosopher. Alongside Winston Churchill, obviously. He hated the public school education system so much that he started his own school and wanted to teach children in his school based on a philosophical system that he believed in. A few years later, he gave up, and he ended up sending his son, who became the 6th Earl Russell, to Eton.
After all of that.
So if he did that, then that must mean there's a point to it.
I think there is a point to it, and I think we've sort of talked on the good aspects that we've taken away from it. Shortcuts, banter culture, all this kind of thing. And obviously there will be those who have gone to public schools that have had completely different experiences from us, because the dark side of it is tough. I think if you don't understand how to game the system and to fit in, it might not be for you. But overall,
it's not a difficult system though.
But it's not. It's actually not.
You can understand it right away, and all you needed to do was to get into it, get stuck in.
Get stuck in. Yeah, there were 180 boys in my year, as I've mentioned, and there were 15 Chinese boys.
Right.
Probably 10 were Cantonese speaking, and 10 were mainly Cantonese speaking, and 5 were mainly Mandarin speaking. And one of these is one of these boys was academically, perhaps he's also like me, grew up entirely in London, so he's British accent and everything, but he wasn't academically great.
Right.
He wasn't musically great. He wasn't theatre great, so he was very much average, which put him in a bit of a difficult situation, because how was he distinguished from the other 179 boys?
Right.
It'll be by his race. So that potentially put him as an easy target for racism. But he entirely, like you said, got into the culture and won over everybody in that sense. So very sort of British thing, or I guess not British thing, but there were different school buses depending on which part of London you lived in.
Right.
And he lived in North London.
Right.
Which for those of you that don't know is made up of mainly Chinese people and Jewish people, essentially.
Pakistani people.
And Pakistani people.
Harrow is in North
And
London.
Harrow's North, exactly.
I used to be told that I think I've since lost it, but I used to speak with a
Pakistan.
North London accent,
North London accent,
apparently.
Yeah. Not surprised at all.
It's not considered posh, but then it's not East End.
Yep.
Sort of in the middle, really. Yeah.
But so this friend of mine would go on this school bus, and to get from my school, which was in Hammersmith in London, for those of you that know where that is,
southwest,
near Richmond, near Putney, by the river.
Yep.
So to get to North London, school time, morning and afternoon, rush hour traffic, it's a good 1 hour bus ride. Bunch of teenage boys on a bus, obviously getting into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And at first, my friend, this Asian boy, he was a target for this, because what are the other 17 boys on the bus going to do? Of course, they're going to bully the new kid, the one Asian.
It's different, really.
Just because he's different.
Yeah.
But within a very short while, like a month or so, he realized exactly what the game was. So he then went on, picked on somebody who was slightly different for another reason.
Yeah.
And then he then became sort of a ringleader on the bus.
Yeah.
And then as he got higher, in year in the school,
Yeah.
he sort of became the leader of this North London.
Yeah.
And he had all these other, nationality groups or people of different personalities.
Chinese people are all very smart, by the way.
Exactly.
And that's what I did. So I was the new Chinese boy, and I used to get picked on, and then I picked on the next Chinese guy. That's exactly what I did.
Exactly. You just have to own it.
Yeah. I like that. I really love that story.
In my year of 180, there were 3 Sebastians, which is crazy because I don't think I've met another Sebastian in Hong Kong.
It's very Catholic-y.
Yeah.
It's Catholic.
Yeah. And there was so obviously I'm a Sebastian.
South American, actually, Latino. Yeah, exactly.
So the second Sebastian was Sebastian Orzieta Chichizola.
Exactly.
Hispanic.
Yeah.
And then the third one was a European boy, and he was Sebastian Kuzik Kampmann, German.
That's German.
So how did they tell the 3 of us apart? So the Seb Kuzik Kampmann became a Seb CK,
right?
Because very easy to understand. The Orzieta Chichizola guy was boring, so he was Seb. So I couldn't be Seb. So what was I? I was Asian Seb. Yeah. And because, as you know from playing football, and you know me in football, quite committed, passionate player, hard tackles, hard running.
Yeah. We forgot to tell people how we met through football. Yeah,
through football. We play football together.
To this day, we play in the same football team. Yeah. But anyway,
playing together for more than 5 years now.
Yeah.
So you can testify. And this. So when I tell you the nickname that I got, you will appreciate it. I was called Asian Fury.
Right.
Because of the football.
Right.
And then it became, Asian Seb Fury, variations of this. And one time a teacher said to me, "Are they bullying you?" Yeah. Because I keep hearing people calling you Seb Fury or Asian Fury or variations of this. And I said, no, it's fine. Yeah. It's a nickname. I've got it. Yeah. And then that also gets you respect with your peers, because they know not only are you not dubbing them in with the teacher, but you're owning what they might have thought was a mean thing to say. Yeah. And then you become one of them. And then, like you said, the next guy comes along, you're doing it to them.
Exactly.
And the world goes round.
Yeah. Just embed yourself in the system and you'll be fine.
Yep.
I still remember, I like telling this story to people, to my clients especially. When I first arrived at the age of 14 in that school, I wasn't confident. Fish out of water, didn't understand the way they really interacted with each other. Came from a Chinese-speaking family, attended local schools. It wasn't easy. Yeah. My English was good enough, I think, because thankfully the education system here, well, it does teach you how to supposedly speak. When I first arrived, I saw this guy. I still remember his name. I don't think he minds me mentioning his name. His name's Tommy Howjigo. Very funny name. I don't know if it's English, by the way. Howjigo. Howgego. Is that English? I don't know. Howjigo. It sounds a bit Portuguese, to be honest. Yeah, anyway.
It's got to have European.
So I met this guy in my year, and he was always the most prominent guy in our year group. He was the school team captain, even though I was only 14. It was sort of, what was this? Under 18, under 16, maybe. Under 16 captain.
Yep.
Anyway, he was
the next one down.
One of the school team captains. And in any class that I attended with him, he was always the first guy to raise his hand and answer questions. But he was usually wrong. He dated the hottest girl in the school.
Of course.
The girl was chasing after him rather than the other way around. And it was always so cocky. It was a bit like Malfoy in Harry Potter. He always had a gang of white boys chasing after him. And I always wondered, what is his secret? Is it because he's good looking? He's not. Is it because he's physically big, like a sportsman? No, he's my height. And I'm Chinese, so that means he's not that big. Is it because he's handsome? No, he's average. This actually looks a bit funny. Was it because he was academic? No, not at all. Definitely not smart like me. Was he good at football? No, not really. He was a captain. But it's only because he plays in central midfield.
Right.
Like Gerard.
Yep.
And he talks a lot. He shouts a lot. He shouts a lot of commands. But he's not actually
doing anything useful.
That good.
Right.
And I just kept wondering, is it because he's rich? No. He's a day boy in a boarding school. Because, not all boarding schools are full boarding.
Yep.
If you can't afford the fees, you can be a day boy and go home at night.
Which is pretty unusual for you guys.
Exactly. So he wasn't exactly
for us to have
from a rich background.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know his secret. Why is he so cocky and so confident and so many students, teachers just loved him, saw him as a leader.
Yep.
And then I realized he fucking faked it until he made it. He doesn't actually have any real qualities. It's just because he so fucking believed in himself that others were attracted to him.
Right.
Because they wanted to be that confident too, even though they weren't good either. And then I realized, actually, confidence has nothing to do with how good you really intrinsically are.
Yep.
You just have to believe in yourself.
Yep.
And just have to promote yourself. Because he was the shameless guy I had then ever met. It was all like, I'm so smart. I'm so good. Like Trump. I so deserve to be the captain. I so deserve to be the leader.
Yep.
Give it to me. And then people believed in him because he so publicly believed himself.
Yeah.
Really. Backed himself up.
Yeah. And this is probably a little bit of a tangent for today's topic, but as both of us are such keen sports players, and we talk about football tactics and also the mentality of players. And increasingly now you read about players' autobiographies or interviews, and they all talk about the mental side of the game. You're a striker. I'm a winger. We're all about scoring goals, which is the most difficult thing to do in football. Yeah. And all the best wingers and strikers all talk about how it's just in their head.
Yeah.
They go into every game telling themselves, I'm going to score today.
Exactly.
I'm going to get a hat trick.
Exactly. It's more about the
get the match
attitude
winner.
rather than your ability.
It's not about the ability.
It's mental. Yeah.
It's all mental.
Yeah. Well, my nickname in the Hong Kong amateur football circles is Hong Kong Inzaghi. Inzaghi isn't exactly known for his footballing ability.
Yep.
But he so believes in his scoring ability that he's scored tons.
Yep.
Even though, honestly, his finishing is shit. And I'm like that. Yeah. I've been captain of my other football team, which you were a part of.
Yep.
For years. Not because of my footballing ability.
Yep.
They all know that I'm probably below average in the team. But I'm the guy who can unite everyone because I give everyone a feel-good factor.
Yes.
I make people believe in themselves. If I can do it, come on, you can do it too. And I like that about public school education, which is they teach you to just believe in yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And to influence, even though honestly, objectively, you might not be that good.
Yes.
You know? When I was at Harrow, I really enjoyed my time doing politics, government and politics, as one of my A-level subjects.
Yep.
I still remember vividly. I was top of class for my exam marks. I remembered all the answers. I was so good at explaining what conservatism was about, what communism was about. And yet in my term report cards, my beak, as in Harrow they call it, the teachers, they used to say that, oh, Joe is very good academically, but
there's always a but.
There's always a but. He's not as loud, as talkative, as contributing in classes. And I used to remember there was a guy on the left of me and on the right. There's an Indian guy and an aristocrat, Lord Gordon from Scotland. His family's Marquis of Aberdeen or something. 200 years ago, his ancestor was at Harrow and was prime minister. And they used to be so bloody talkative, able to explain themselves out of any situation, always proving themselves to be right on the bloody political spectrum. And yet scoring B's and C's in their exams and always got that A. And yet they got better report cards because the school appreciated someone who can talk themselves out, you know. I then realized this is not about your exam grade.
Yep.
That's a difference.
That's a big difference between
the UK system and the Hong Kong system.
Yep. Generally speaking.
If I were in Hong Kong, I'd be considered the ideal.
Yep.
The best.
Yeah.
Creme de la creme. But in Harrow, they were like,
good grades.
You Chinese boy, you're too quiet.
Yes.
These two are the best. You know your answers, but they are better. God. Then I realized the game had changed. And I'm known to be a very flexible person. I decided that since I had moved to the UK, I had to play the English
game.
I played it, and
played it very successfully.
I think I've done rather successfully. So even to this day, many people in Hong Kong, I have admittedly a lot of haters in Hong Kong. They don't get me, but I know what I'm doing, and I know that a lot of educated audience, especially those who studied abroad as well, they get me.
Yep.
That's fascinating. It's a cultural collision, but one in which I think we have the upper hand. In a way.
The cultural difference in the education system is startling. I remember, as you know, because I grew up entirely in the UK and I've never lived in Hong Kong. I never went to school here. And the first time I sort of formally went to school here was when I was, 20-something.
You did your PCL here.
Doing PCL here. And I did PCL at City U as well.
Oh, right, City U.
City U is
right.
Slightly more local, I would say. Again, no offense to anybody out there.
Yeah.
And
Kowloon Tong.
Kowloon Tong, yeah. Can
very
you imagine?
Nice. Yeah.
For me, growing up, posh public school, 13 rugby football pitches depending on the season, athletics track, swimming pool, badminton pitch on site, university in the UK, and then here's Kowloon Tong, City U, PCLL. Not that it was bad, it was just a big...
It's actually quite a posh location in Hong Kong.
Kowloon Tong was great. It was such a shock being taught the Hong Kong way.
Yeah.
And I remember going to the tutorials for PCLL And we were, for example, land law, say, taught by a very famous teacher, PCL, who shall remain nameless. And we were taught, for example, something like how to read a assignment, the mortgage deeds or whatever it might be, very practical. But we were taught not actually how to read them. It was, this is what you need to know for your exam. If you do this, you will be able to pass your exam. And I was thinking, no. I've always been taught to understand the issue in question, and then how you approach it before you get to answering the questions. Answering questions and doing well in exams is simply a byproduct of learning about the thing itself. Whilst my experience of the Hong Kong education system, at least just from PCLL, was it's about getting the best marks in the exams, which is like what you said. If you had been here, you would have done very well all the way through, because it's just about getting exam results. Whilst the Western education system, particularly in the UK, it's more about the process, how you get to your answer, what is your thought process, the rationale, that sort of thing.
Well, I do actually think that the Western way of educating adolescents is more useful in real life. I like that. I find it more useful, more helpful when we come to construct our careers. I like that very much.
Yes, and I also wonder, what is the sort of general, putting it out there, question? I wonder, what is the benefit of teaching adolescents, boys and girls, who are at that age, you know, discovering themselves, finding out who they are personality-wise, sexuality-wise, whatever it might be, to then, even in the education side of things, try to force them into a box, very rigid. Is that conducive to their learning?
No.
I would think not, but maybe the evidence suggests otherwise. It's interesting.
What I see from my consultancy work is that, I don't want to get any political, but the local education system tend to produce people who genuinely don't feel free. No matter how well they do, by the way. They can do rather well career-wise.
Definitely.
And yet they don't feel free.
Yes.
And yet for someone who had gone through the public school system, I do feel that no matter how cocked up you are in real life, you feel rather good. That's the difference.
That's a really, really good point, actually. Thinking, even as you said, even though despite my school having a third Oxbridge success rate, the careers that my classmates from St. Paul's have gone on to do have been so varied.
I do want to ask you this, Seb, because this is very important for the local audience. They can never understand. So, your namesake, St. Paul's, if you talk to St. Paul's Co-Ed or St. Paul's College, out of any particular year group, many of them, I'm not too sure if it's in the majority, but a lot of them would have gone on to pursue a degree in a professional subject.
I would think so, yes.
Engineering, law, medicine,
medicine,
accounting and finance.
Business related.
What did the alumni of St. Paul's go on to do in university and subsequent career?
So at university, it was varied. There were those who, perhaps because their family were very successful finance people, medical practitioners, dentists, lawyers, they might go down the sort of traditional paths. There were those who were continuing to game the system in university. They actually didn't care. They literally didn't give a shit about what they studied. But they picked subjects that would get them either into universities that were good, Oxbridge, London, the cliched ones, or they picked universities because they wanted to go somewhere and have fun, because they'd been living in London for 18 years and they wanted to get as far away as possible from their parents. I
do know that a lot of public school kids wouldn't choose any London university as their destination.
I had lots of classmates choosing perhaps not as far as Scotland, though some did, but at least to go to Newcastle and Manchester.
Bristol would have been the most popular second choice.
Bath was also very popular because the southwest is quite nice. Edinburgh, exactly. Edinburgh was the one for Scotland. Warwick, Durham, all of those usual ones. Somewhere that's good, but it's far away from London. No parents, nothing like that.
Exactly, yeah.
But they knew that they need to get a certain grade, do a certain subject for that. So there were those who kind of game the system that way. And then there were those who were sort of free spirits, and they went on to do arts courses. They went to America. Somebody did a filmmaking degree in London.
Yeah.
All sorts.
Varied. Yeah. At Harrow, it's the same. I think in my boarding house, I still remember we had 18 boys from my year. 3 got into Oxford. All Oxford, no Cambridge. I did maths. Our head of house, who also got into Oxford, did biochemistry. The third guy did geography.
Right.
And out of the 160 of us, I think fewer than 10 chose law or medicine. I remember vividly.
Interesting.
Very few chose medicine.
Very interesting.
Very few chose law. Mostly chose, really random stuff. But then that's the UK uni system as well. You don't have to choose a profession.
No. Actually, thinking back, not that many actually chose medicine or law at my school either. I can only think off the top of my head of 3 others, excluding me, who did law. And one
except
medicine.
I think next time we should talk about the UK uni system.
Yeah.
Because you did law at Bristol.
Yep.
And I did maths, a pure academic subject at Oxford. I think we should really talk about the differences between the UK education system and the Hong Kong education system. Because despite Hong Kong having been a colony for 150 years, we are so different when it comes to university education ethos.
Yes. And it'd actually be quite interesting to talk to somebody like you who didn't study a practical degree like mine, because I studied law, and obviously the majority of people I knew at university in Bristol were lawyers.
Yeah, I prided myself on having studied something that's completely useless. So till next time.
See you soon.
Next time.